Um, so I am going to go ahead and introduce Ian. Ian is a crafter in our LA office. He's actually a senior software crafter. He taught himself software engineering using a self-designed Scrum of One. He has worked on more than a dozen client code bases and favors work on real-time communications. He studied Taoist philosophy for 10 years. When not writing software, he can be found in ensemble improvising full-length plays in the style of famous actors streamed over Twitch. And I think you announced recently you're doing something with Shakespeare, right?
Yeah, that's right. We're doing actually later today. And today being Shakespeare's birthday, or actually his death day. I think it might be the same.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah.
Great. I will be recording this talk, and I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Ian. Thanks for everybody for joining us, and thanks Ian for presenting.
Okay, thanks, Nicole. Hey, everybody. My name is Ian Carroll, and I am a senior software crafter at Eighth Light. We're going to be talking about my experiences with Webrtc, clean code, and the challenges and opportunities in test-driven, well-abstracted real-time communications. So buckle in. We're going to have a time. Hopefully it'll be a fun time. All right, let me switch this over. I'm also OBS operating for myself right now, so in case you are knowing about that. Okay, well, my name is Ian Carroll. I'm a senior software crafter at Eighth Light. I'm self-taught. I taught myself software engineering while working at a bookstore, and I used a Scrum of One to do it. Before that, I was a theater major. In fact, I studied Shakespeare at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art for a brief period of time, for a summer. It was a great summer. Any case, though, I'm also a Taoist philosopher, and if you're wondering what that means, it really just means I make a good cup of tea. So if you need advice on how to make tea, yeah, just come straight over to me. It's fine. Okay. So I also do improv theater, and in fact, right now in LA, I am doing a show later today using this same setup, where I'm going to be improvising a full-length play in the style of a famous author. In this case, it's going to be William Shakespeare, and we're going to be doing Roman Shakespeare improvised. I used to do that in a theater, but the theater closed. Because we can't actually assemble anymore. So I was in a little bit of an existential crisis about what exactly to do with myself. So I started going into maybe figuring out how to do online performances using Twitch, Zoom, OBS, and streaming real-time communications. Because I thought to myself, well, I'm a software engineer. How hard can it be to just make this work? I mean, we've got phones on your laptop, phones on your camera, all kinds of cool stuff. So yeah, these cameras work. So how hard could it actually be to just make this work? But there's a lot going on with these cameras. And that's one thing that I discovered over a year of being alone in my apartment and trying to figure out how to make this work, where I could actually be working with other people again. And so, yeah, there is so much that's happening here. And what they really are doing is they're making a lot of assumptions about what you want. Let me give you an example here. I'm going to do a side-by-side view of my two cameras. Now, one of these, the one that you're seeing right now, and as I transition over to the other one, unfortunately, for the Zoom watchers, you might not be able to see this. So I'm going to switch over to my other camera for the Zoom watchers. This is my FaceTime camera. Now you may notice there's some differences in picture quality. One of the first things you might notice is the camera angle. That's because the camera in this case is fixed to the monitor on my laptop, and it's expecting me to have this monitor set up like this and me working this way, framed correctly now, right? But the other thing, I'm not sure if you can tell, unless you're doing the side-by-side on Twitch, but there is a little difference in how my face looks in each of these. And that's because of the fact that this camera, the one that is on my laptop, is a wide-angle lens. And they're almost all wide-angle lenses. And the only reason to do that is because you need to be close to the person. And the person also wants to have a wide view of the rest of their room so that they can sit back or they can move around. And they're still in frame, basically. To be in frame in a tighter view is something that's a little bit more professional. Another thing is that this camera right here, it comes standard with the laptop. You don't have to pay for it at all. There's no extra cost. And so it makes you wonder, why would you buy an expensive camera if the one that you have in your laptop is good enough? And so the key thing here is that it's making a lot of assumptions. You'll also notice that the colors are a lot brighter on this camera. It's because of the fact that it's choosing the color, that rather than me making that manual choice like I did on this on the other camera. Also, it will autofocus. So if I step further away, it actually keeps me in focus. The other camera won't do that. It's manual. But that's what you're paying for when you buy an expensive camera. You're actually paying to have that control, as opposed to having someone else make that decision for you. Let me switch this camera back, and you can see the difference. Another thing is that this means that there's a lot of equipment that you end up needing to buy. Let me show you this setup real quick, see if I can actually show it to you. All right, transition here, and then for the zoomies, let's go ahead and have you watch this other webcam. This is my setup right now. I'm not sure if that actually worked. Did you actually see that? It looks like it stopped. Pull it out, put it back in. Is it working? Okay, it's figuring itself out. All smartphones have an off button, even iPhones. Yeah, that's true. Although I'm not sure why you're mentioning that, Ron, but I'll keep that in mind. Yeah, you can turn the camera off. That's true, and you can turn this one off too. But that's you're actually, I see your point. Yeah, yes, that is the amount of control you have. You could turn it off, but everything else is being decided for you. Now, this equipment is all in here. This is the camera. This camera costs about, I don't know, $3,000. It's as much as the laptop itself. Not to mention all the support equipment that you're seeing all around here, in order to make this setup one that I choose rather than one that the producers for my MacBook Pro use. So yeah, let's see about that then. Let's switch now. Okay, there's cameras that make a lot of assumptions about what you want. For one thing, there's audio engineering as well that goes into this. Video, which you're seeing, including photography. Also cinematography is involved with this. There is a very big difference between having a camera angle like this versus having a camera angle that's pointed up at your chin. That has a different psychological impact on the people around you, and you might not realize it, but that does need to be taken into account. Then there's also telephony when you're talking about WebRTC, because you're talking about streaming a image from one person to another, and then having it come back and having it do so in a reasonable amount of time. Moving on, there's also all these other things that are going on here, like shutter speed, frame rate, encoding, lens physics, exposure, ISO, bit depth, noise cancellation, aperture, aspect ratio, white balance, tint, contrast. I could go on, but I'm not going to. My point is to say that this is really complicated stuff. And each one of these things is its own field of engineering. And here I am trying to take all of this and do all of it myself, and also be the performer while I'm doing all of that. So enter WebRTC. WebRTC is an open source framework that is built by Google. They did it so that they could have real-time communications, that's what the RTC stands for, going back and forth between two browsers without having any intermediary. And the idea here was that that was going to be very low latency, which is really cool. That means you use your browser, You get the camera, and you send the feed. And that's all it really does. It also receives feed as well, and so this is a vast oversimplification of what's going on, but this is what you'll see. It is ultra low latency, which is really nice if you're going to be having like a conversation with somebody else, especially if you're discovering scene work on the spot and deciding that someone else is your mother and that they're about to die or whatever. If you're going for high drama, maybe that can be hilarious. No, it really can't be hilarious. Never mind. So let's just sort of, in a nutshell, WebRTC is like a flashlight, to mix my metaphors, except that the flashlight does not have its own batteries. You have to bring your own. And also, there's no light bulb included. By the way, also, you're going to need to build your own switch onto it. And also, it has a chance to shock you electrically, or strangely enough, suck your blood sometimes, unexpectedly. But this is essentially an analogy for what this is. So here are some things that you need to consider when you're dealing with WebRTC. You need to deal with net traversal, which is getting across network barriers. A lot of times there are firewalls involved, especially if you're talking about administrative centers and things like that, corporate places, or anything that's HIPAA compliant. You're going to need that as well. Network connection is going to be an issue for you because you're talking about streaming data over the live internet, and that is fluctuating at all times and out of your control. Processing power is another thing that you're going to need because you're encoding and decoding videos, and that means like right now I'm probably encoding and decoding a number of times as I try and get this channel out to Twitch and then also to Zoom. And so that's processor intensive. So you need a good amount of processing power. In fact, there is a chance that this laptop will overheat itself before this talk is over and everything will crash. I've just become used to that, but that's true. There are ways of handling that, of course, but that is just something to be aware of. There's also signaling. It didn't mention that for WebRTC, you need a way to let someone know that, hey, I want to give you a call. And then the other person say, hey, I hear that you want to give me a call. And, yeah, I'm going to give you a call now. Okay, give me a call. And then the connection happens. So that signaling is also important. So yeah, that's some of the things that are complex about it. But if you want more than two people, then you have to deal with things like building an AWS infrastructure, or maybe you want to use another cloud hosting provider out there. There are quite a few. I'm going to mention AWS because we're on Twitch, and Twitch is owned by Amazon. Okay, so I didn't need to do that. They don't care, but I mean, I did that. Regions. You also need to worry about different laws in different countries if you're going to be streaming across borders. If you're going to, also need to worry about media servers now. Things like having a centralized hub where all these signals come in and then go out, instead of doing this mesh network like you're seeing down over here. If you're on Twitch, this makes sense. If you're on Zoom, I'm sorry. Then there's also security to concern yourself with, and that is another issue as well that you definitely need to take care of, because you can build up this entire infrastructure, and if you don't keep it secure, other people can use it to make their own calls, just like in a real telephone network. Yeah, that is a good question, Nicole. How do you keep track of where you are streaming internationally with regards to regulations? If you've got media servers involved, then you need to ask the question of where the media server is located. Where is the actual data center where the hub of all these connections is coming in? Also, by the way, that's going to make a difference in how much latency you've got. If my connection needs to go through Singapore, then it's going to be a lot slower than if it has to go through Los Angeles, which is almost right where I am. So yeah, that is another thing to consider. You could also go with third-party providers, but if you do that, you will run into the same kinds of problems you run into when you use your camera phone or your laptop phone, which is that you need to like the assumptions they make about you. You need to pay them to keep the lights on at all times, and you need to rest your success if this is a mission critical piece of equipment or a mission critical feature, on their ability to deliver consistently and to not charge you more or anything else like that. So there's a real problem with vendor lock-in if you do that. That being said, it's a great way to rapidly prototype, so that might not be such a bad idea. And if there are standard things that people need, because I could imagine like a world in which, you know, you can talk with a live agent about your blah, 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 or whatever it is that you're doing business about, and there's a WebRTC connection right there, done. It would be nice to have someone just have figured out all of these details for you already, just so you can have that one feature. But if it's something that is like mission critical and it also needs to be specific, then yeah, yeah, that is going to be interesting. Editing this one will be fun. Yeah, I know. I just go off the cuff like crazy. Here's another question. Do you think Google or WebRTC will get a lot of pushback from companies like Zoom or Twilio since they are removing the middleman? No, I don't think so. And there are a couple of reasons why. One is that Twilio is just using WebRTC. It's just straight using WebRTC. It's just handling all this complexity for you. So they're going, thanks, Google, no problem. The other thing is that Google's WebRTC API is one that is that leaves a lot to you, which is good in one sense, and also means that it will take you time to ramp this up in another sense. So Zoom gets its market share by the fact that they're ahead of the game and they have their own proprietary Franken version of WebRTC that they've built internally. And that Franken version of things is so good and so powerful and so reliable and meets pretty much everyone's needs that it makes it really hard for anyone else to enter into the market. So that's the strategy there for Zoom. But right now, this ecosystem works pretty well. I don't think that in general there's a lot of pushback for open source technologies right now. Lots of companies still use it to rapidly get into the game, or if you want to if you don't want to rely upon other companies to do your work for you, then open source tooling is exactly what you need. And so in that sense, bravo for WebRTC being free and open source. Yeah, there are a number of different strategies and things that happen when you start using real-time communications, or well, sorry, not real-time communications. When you start using open source tools, and when you open source something as a company, there is a strategy around that about why you would even do that. Why would you give software away for free? There are people like me who are just idealistic and say, yeah, we should have it for free. But why a company does it? There's a number of reasons. Let me get back to these slides here. Now, WebRTC that you see in the wild is usually going to be single file examples or single file pieces of code. Let me see. Okay, so this right here is OBS Ninja. And OBS Ninja is this is a really used piece of WebRTC that is in the wild right now that people use to stream low latency back and forth with OBS. So this would be used for interview shows and things like that on Twitch, for example. And you can see that really what's going on here is it's all just one gigantic JavaScript file, the whole thing. Here is it, main.js, and here it is, just keeps going. So if you're having a hard time following this, partially it's because of the fact that I'm scrolling through it so fast, and the other part of it is that this is not what I would consider clean, although at least, you know, there are words going on here. And I don't want to harsh on the creator of this because, oh my goodness, this tool was so useful. But it makes it very difficult for you to get in and change things or tweak it or make it your own. You really can't. It's just this monolithic thing that you just get. And it just works. So long as you just need it to just work and you don't need to extend it in any way, then that's great. Yeah, you can see this keeps going. I'm not even done yet. I could just keep talking for like another couple of minutes on exactly how long this file really is. But you know, someone actually went through and coded all of this, which is really actually very impressive. Not even a third of the way down. Yeah. So I'm going to stop here just because there's really no point in me getting to the end of this file. I mean, what's really going to happen? Are we going to learn something? No. So I'm just going to switch back. Here we are. Back to presenting. So that's the kind of thing that exists in the wild. And when you see single page examples like that, what ends up happening is that you tend to extend what's already there rather than starting to abstract, pull out, use what I would call solid design principles. So what if we were to create a Webrtc implementation that was with solid design principles? And what do I mean by solid design principles? I can list these off, I think. Single responsibility principle. There's the open-close principle, list cost substitution. What's the I? I'll get it in a second. D is, I is interface segregation. And D, anyone know D in the chat? Somebody knows D in the chat. But really, the key thing about solid design principles is really just about the single responsibility principle. That first one really covers all the others. Dependency inversion. Thank you, Nicole. Yes, that's it. Dependency inversion, which can definitely happen if you've got a file that is, several thousand lines long. There might be things going on in there, which makes it really difficult for you to get your hands dirty with it and try and figure out how to actually engineer this stuff. But really what this comes down to is, can we get Webrtc with single responsibility principle? That is, like, the camera is taken care of by itself. The feed is taken care of by itself. The signaling is its own separate file. And these things just get called together. So from a high level, you can just understand that. Drake Fish, good job. Yeah, you got dependency as well. And no, just because Nicole put that answer before yours, I'm going to take it that you came up with that on your own. So no worries. All right, so this is really just SRP. And really what we mean by just SRP is we mean really just name things nice. That's really all we're doing. We're just naming things nice and putting them in their own files, and that's it. And when we put them in their own files, it's just the stuff that it cares about, not anything else. There's no extra stuff. Like, my jar of mayonnaise for my sandwich does not also have pickled salmon in it. There's no need for that. I can have a jar of pickled salmon, a jar of mayonnaise, and if I want mayonnaise with pickled salmon in it, I can put those together myself. But I want them in separate jars to begin with. Just for, another analogy. I'm rolling with these analogies. Did I mention that I do improv? I do. This comes down to just use your words. Use words and put things in a way that makes sense, and that's it. That's all you need to do. It's not really that hard, but it does become hard if you don't do it from the beginning. And when you get single page examples that are just extended into really big single page examples, and that just continues, then as long as you don't need it to change in any way, you're fine. And at that point, why even bother writing your own? You might as well just go ahead and use the third party. Webrtc, what if we test drive it? What does that mean, test-driven development? There's a couple of ways we can do test-driven development, of course, and I forgot to actually, I didn't forget, I just failed to put the right slide in here. So I'm going to just draw this right now. So here is our testing pyramid. This is the standard testing pyramid. You would do manual tests up here. That means actually making a call with your Webrtc app and checking to see that everything is working the way it should be. Then you would have integration tests a step below that. Integration tests are the kinds of things that React would really like. Also, if any of you guys are into Selenium, that's another integration test thing. Integration tests are great because they are they validate actual behavior, but they also they're also pretty expensive to run. They take time. They don't take as much time as like actually making a call and like, hey, are you getting my signal? Yeah, I'm getting your signal. Are you getting my signal? Yeah, I'm getting your signal. Hey, is there any problems with my signal? Okay. No, I maybe. I think it's fine. Down here is another lever. Yeah. Do you just run that monster.js in a node instance? Yeah, on when you're talking about OBS Ninja. OBS Ninja is deployed. There's a website. And because it's all JavaScript code, you just get the code and it just runs. It runs through your browser. Nothing else knows about it. You don't have to run it in a node instance. You could if you wanted to, but good luck trying to figure out how to get into it to do that. And then the final one is unit tests. Now, in a typical testing pyramid, you'd want this unit test to be at the bottom here. At least this is the classic way in which you would do things for a Rails app or something like that. And the unit tests are really what design your app and help you to maintain single responsibility. But yeah, integration or unit tests. Doing it this way is more common. Although it would be really nice if we at least got to the point where we were using mostly integration tests rather than bothering with millions of manual calls, which, by the way, is something that actually happens in telephoning engineering stuff. That's not a proper term, but when you're making calls, they used to actually just employ a bank of people making calls and then writing down their score of how good the quality was. We can't really do that for software engineering. That's just it's just going to be hard. There's also no need. We can actually create automated tests for it. But yeah, for like when it comes to something like React, for example, which is a front-end framework, React. Usually, they like to do integration tests first because they find that the unit tests lock them into one design pattern, and they don't want to. They want to have the freedom and flexibility to refactor. That makes sense. But proper unit tests actually do help figure out single responsibility principle, because without those, you can just make a mess. And there are plenty of React apps that are just a mess. So, yeah, there's a balancing act here. But what if we could know ahead of time that the call was going to work? What if we could know the quality of that call? What if we could know what if that knowledge and those tests could allow us to change easily? What if that would allow it for more engineers to actually work with Webrtc? We could get juniors to be able to understand it more quickly, and they could actually focus on one portion of it. For that matter, it helps with the seniors as well. I mean, I don't move any faster for working with not clean code, with that, like, consider the impact streaming real-time communications can have on humanity. Like, what kinds of things can we do? There are a lot of that. Draft codes, yeah, I know. I've had messy React apps myself. I get you, no problem. So, yeah, that is the end of my talk. And really, it's more of a request for comments about how we might test drive some of this stuff, like the integration test, for example. How do you integration test when you need a live connection through the internet in order to properly test it? What does that even look like? What kind of a framework would that be? How about unit testing? How do you actually break this thing into pieces to make it work? Yeah. If you want some YouTube talks, you can go to my channel. There's FTL Talks. iandcarroll.medium.com for my blog posts that are usually about Scrum and Agile development stuff. So check that out. Besides that, I'm also doing a show later tonight on twitch.tv/ /impro_TV. I'm not going to bother writing that down, but yeah, it's going to be improvised Shakespeare in the style of his Roman tragedy, so lots of murder and blood over Zoom. So that's pretty much it. I'll take, if anyone has questions, go ahead and shout them out in the chat on Twitch, or, for that matter, the chat on Zoom. And as for Zoom, let's go ahead and we're gonna turn on everyone's mic on Zoom as well. Good question. Will I be dumping all those URLs I mentioned in chat? Sure. I'm not sure I can do it on Twitch. It'll stop me, but I can do it at least. On Zoom. So I'll go and do that. Later tonight at about 7 o'clock is when we're doing the improvised Shakespeare. And this is the chat for that. That's the place for that. Twitch.tv/impro_TV. Then I'll put the other ones in there. Questions?
So Ian, I probably have 100 questions for you.
Oh, good. Please go for it.
You mentioned so the Webrtc is some sort of adapter that allows you to connect your OBS instance either to a video sync or a source that connects you to the other side of the planet.
Oh, wait. Are you talking about OBS or are you talking about Webrtc?
Both. Webrtc is what gets implemented by that monster.js file. Is that?
Yes, that's correct. That is a Webrtc implementation. Now it's designed to work with OBS, but that's another matter.
Okay, but I mean, in that sense, it's some sort of adapter that gives you channels in and out of OBS to connections across the planet or to other.
Yes.
Is that what its business is about?
OBS Ninja is it's actually open source, which is why I could just show you the source code. It was given for free because someone just felt like, the world should have it. And it connects browser to browser directly. There is no middleman. So it goes across the live internet. It needs no media servers, no infrastructure of any kind. For that reason, it ends up being very low latency. But it does not need a media server for that one.
Okay, but at some point it has to connect to a video node on the machine that OBS is running on, right? Like a loopback or something.
Yeah, that's handled through your browser.
Okay. Since you are running OBS, and it sounds like you've been doing it quite a long time, or
a year,
or a good amount of time.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the hardware you're running it on?
Oh gosh, this hardware is not the right hardware for it, but I will talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what kind of CPU are you running with a GPU? Have you had any other? I've been trying to figure out which GPU card is going to help OBS out the most, and it's a very slippery question.
Yes.
Because if you ask NVIDIA, for example, they tell you our best one.
Of course. Really, it is a resource hog. And Webrtc is even more of a resource hog, to be honest. But the best thing, like I'm running this off of a MacBook Pro right now. This is my works MacBook Pro. But what else? Yeah, what you can use is a decent graphics card really is good enough, but graphics cards are hard to come by right now. So you might consider just streaming with a lower, just downgrade the quality a few steps and try it that way. I'd say that might be the easiest thing to do. Hey, Peyton Rules, good to see you. So Graphics is going to be the main thing, and it's the encoding that's the processor intensive part. So the better GPU you've got, the better it works. Yeah, 8 gigabytes works pretty well, I think.
So
Although
like
this
on
one's
your
4.
on a MacBook Pro, they don't advertise XYZ company's GPU. It's just Apple's GPU, right?
That's right. Although I think it is an NVIDIA thing on the inside of this one.
Okay.
But AMD would work just as well. Let me just take a look at my Mac's thing. Graphics, AMD Radeon 5300M, 4 gigabyte. So that works well enough, although the system does cook. So if you up it from 4 gigabytes to an 8 gigabyte card, that would probably be a better choice. You want to get to the point where you're using hardware encoding. Is really the key there.
Do you know which specific encoder is preferred, or?
H.264 seems to work pretty well,
Okay.
and that's pretty standard.
I've noticed a couple of off-the-shelf El Cheapo webcams claim that they're compliant with that, and don't know if I haven't looked into it. I don't know if they're saying that we train, the camera has that encoding built into it. I'm not sure that's the case, but I don't know why else they would print it on the box. So that there may be some cameras out there that have a dedicated encoding chip in them these days. I'll have to look into that more.
I mean, the only thing that could probably provide you is that you don't have to decode the camera into the laptop and then re-encode it going out.
Right.
But
yeah. Well, if you're going to mess with it, you have to decode it. But if the camera is sending you that
it shouldn't matter at all.
Yeah.
It ends up getting encoded by whatever the codec is for OBS, which I believe is H.264. You can choose what codec you use for Webrtc. The most common one is VP8, which is Google's version of H.264, which is also open source, unlike H.264, which is a proprietary format, and you're supposed to pay some hundreds of thousands of dollars for each encoder. Decoders are free. So to receive the signal is one thing, but if you want to send people signals, then you're a professional video producer, and you should pay for that. So that's their reasoning. I'm seeing a question in here. Could video performance be a factor to test WebRTC? Yeah, Christian, that's absolutely true. And for that matter, what camera are you using to do it? For that matter, why do you even need to use a camera? You could actually just go ahead and take an MP4 video or something like that you have standardly set up and call that the video feed. It doesn't have to actually be live. But yeah, and that gets into a whole world of what do you decide is quality? Is it frames per second? Is it the pixels? This camera right here that I'm broadcasting with right now is broadcasting at 1080p at 30 frames per second. And so is the webcam that I have, which is about 1/40th the price. And you can tell the difference in quality. So there's something else going on there. But that gets into video engineering as well. It's trying to figure out whether or not you received the signal the way that it came through. And how to ensure that it's a good quality signal. For that matter, whether it's the right signal. Because, I mean, this one right here, I've optimized this camera to make myself look good. But I've got an app on here to actually address that, just to show this. See if I can actually connect to my camera. So, for example, here's the ISO. And if I bump this up, then I'm going to start looking brighter. Now, the brighter ISO might work if you've got a darker skin tone, because more of your features are going to be showing up. But for me, this is starting to blow me out, right? So how do you determine which of those it is? How do you make sure that everyone looks their best? And how do you even know what their best actually is? For that matter, I can also do things with the iris, which you'll notice as it gets darker, It's also bringing that background more into focus. Oops, that's too much. Anyway, I could geek out about this for a while, but I don't want to get too far into the weeds here. I'll stop there. Other questions?
Yeah, I got one more if you don't mind.
Please, go for it.
So, not to get off topic, but I found your background really interesting.
All right.
Is there like an intersection between philosophy and software development where just having all this philosophy background helped you in your software engineering career?
I mean, yes, is the short answer to that. And I could be speaking a little self-congratulatorily this way. That's a word, right? Anyway, I think having a background in philosophy helps you as a software engineer. For one thing, it helps you to conceptualize what's going on and to figure out like analogies to what this is, what you're doing. It also helps with ethics, which you're really going to need. Outpost 13 showed up. McCready, oh my gosh, McCready 13. This is so great. I am so thrilled that they're here. Anyway, let me get back to this. Philosophy does matter for software engineering. Anything matters for software engineering. In fact, the more diverse your background is, the more I think you should be involved with software engineering. We have too many of the same kind of person doing software engineering. And the more diverse backgrounds that we have, actually coding up what our future is going to look like, the more compassionate and equitable that future will be. If we don't have that, then it will work for some, probably not as well as they think it does because they have a limited perspective. And then for everyone else, it will be absolutely miserable. So please, if you have a diverse background, anything at all, definitely get involved with software. As for philosophy, yeah, I mean, studying the I Ching, that has a lot to do with some fundamentals of mathematics. It actually works really well with understanding bits, weirdly enough. The concept of yin and yang, what is there and what's not there. The difference between what is defined and then what's left undefined are all things that definitely fuel how I think about and design software and how I write software in a way that other people can understand. So yeah, that's that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Totally. Thanks, Charles. I really appreciate that. Anyone else have any other questions, comments, ways in which maybe there's something I'm missing? Because I frequently miss stuff. Oh, go ahead, Ron. It looked like you were about to say something.
I'd like to know more about your expensive camera.
Oh yeah, sure. That's a Blackmagic.
So if it, is it a dedicated video camera, and how are you getting it into your Mac?
Oh yeah. This is a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K. That's the body. The lens is a Canon. I think this is a 16 to 35 millimeter lens, which counts as kind of wide angle, but I can get it into a cinematic kind of range. It works for the size of the room. Is really what I ended up doing for that. Then I've also rigged it out with a cage, and how you get that camera signal into the computer is by using a video capture card. There's a couple of different ones that you can get. Yeah, something like that.
This?
Yeah,
something like that.
That's pretty much it. You have the HDMI out that plugs into the capture card, and then it has a USB in to your computer, and the computer will just simply go like, oh, this is a webcam. It's fine with that.
I've got a couple different flavors of these, and they are not all the same. And there's really no good way to figure that out without trying one.
That's
sadly,
true.
but,
Yeah. If you get the professional ones, they're expensive, but they work. They give you a few extra things. What I've got here, and I'll show you this. This is a video monitor. that is also a capture card. So the capture card works through here. And then the video monitor can show me other things like waveforms. So I can know like how well I am in focus, how exposed or underexposed, overexposed the image is. As you can see from this, I'm actually a little on the dark side here. And that's fine. It does create a certain mood. And then you end up getting into like cinematography and trying to understand like what the psychological impact is of different kinds of shots and different kinds of backgrounds. Like every single thing I've got in this frame in some way is there for the most part on purpose. So yeah, it actually all does play very subtly into psychology.
So that you said that camera takes a Canon lens. So is it actually a DSL, a normal DSL camera, or is it just strictly a video source?
It's a cinema camera. So it is optimized for streaming video
Gotcha.
and for doing film production, essentially. So yes, can take stills. It's not its intended purpose. So it's not going to get you that 80 megapixel one shot, but it will do video very effectively. There are cheaper ones to get. And to be honest, I think the best thing you can do is get something that has a good lens. And you don't really need very much more than 1080p, to be honest. I mean, this thing is 6K. And if I was to record directly into it, it would record at 6K, but it still is only going to give me 1080p output. And besides, Twitch doesn't do anything more than 1080p anyway. So that's the top that there is right now for streaming live communications. And even then, it's not always what you need. Sometimes you need something that isn't that high blown.
Just yeah, I tried to use a Canon DSLR. It was a T3, and it kind of sort of works. They tell you right off the bat you're going to have heating problems. It's not gonna be a studio camera. And then the other nasty thing is it refuses to autofocus while it's in video mode.
Oh yeah, this one doesn't
Pretty
autofocus
useless.
at all.
Oh, okay. So I got my hands on another Canon, a mirrorless M50, and it does all the right things. It autofocuses in video mode. They also kind of warn you about the heating problems, so you might need to put a fan on it. You definitely have to get a remote power supply for it and whatnot. But Canon also rolled out another mirrorless. It's exactly like the M50. They call it, I think it's the M200. It's about a $600 cam, but it has the ability to flip the view screen around so that you can, like if you put it on a tripod, you can see what the camera's shooting, like in a selfie mode, more or less. Whereas the M50, you can flip it out, but you can't turn it around for some reason. But again, you may still have these issues where you might have to jump through some hoops to keep it powered and to keep it cool enough.
Yeah, I got the
gonna
same
do
kind of things going
an
on.
an hour or two session, yeah.
Yeah, there's I mean, once you start getting into the world of like buying your own camera, you'll soon discover that there's nothing that's optimized exactly for what you need. You have to kind of, it's just like any engineer has to face. There are trade-offs. It's the only difference is that now the trade-offs involve you ordering equipment that's really expensive and discovering at some point, this is a cost of learning. But yeah, there is nothing out there that's going to be perfectly optimized for you. And if there is, it's because it's become commoditized to the point where they are taking advantage of an art form that has already come and gone. So,
I mean, you're so right about that. And even though Canon advertises that M200 as the go-to camera for streamers, they still have some of those issues. But
yeah.
I think it's kind of amazing what you can do with a $5 light bar, though.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of things that you can do with, once you start playing around with it. Absolutely.
It's a color light bar, yeah.
So Diana Zoe, I'm going to take it. What's the negatives of Twitch? You mentioned earlier that Twitch won't let you post links. Oh, yeah. That's just to keep trolls from spamming your channel and putting in things like, oh, come to this website over here. Stop watching this video and watch this other thing. That's what I mean when I say that Twitch won't let me post the link there. It doesn't realize that I'm the one who's presenting today. We could change that if we wanted to, but we didn't. So that's it. The negatives to Twitch, if you're talking about audience, this is primarily a gaming platform, so the fact that we're doing a talk on software development here is a little different, but I like being different. I don't get any help from algorithms that way, but otherwise, it's fine. Any other questions? I think my computer is starting to overheat itself. So I think we're going to need to end the stream. Thanks very much, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and close down OBS. There are more shows that will be coming through 8LU and also just Twitch in general. And so, yeah, stay tuned.
Thanks, Ian.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, actually, one last question. Do you belong to any like OBS support groups or something like that at all?
TADA, TADA. It's a Facebook group. You're welcome to check that out. But that's really designed for people who want to produce theater streamed online. So, yeah, that's that.
I'm sure they got some great tricks, though.
Oh, yeah.
Just a man. When you start saying a mountain is a mountain, a river is a river. But living Zen, a mountain is not a mountain, a river is not a river. After learning Zen, a mountain is a mountain,